the government's been shut down. I wouldn't know. I mean, I say this sort of glibly. I don't rely on the government for the things that people who rely on the government for might see delays in payments for certain benefits and certain things that there are vulnerable people who rely on the government for these things. So I haven't noticed the shutdown. I saw Thomas Massey jokingly put up a post and says, during the government shutdown, you see a lot less chemtrails in the sky. I don't know, man. I was looking at the sky in Florida. I still see what look like chemtrails. But what's the effect of a shutdown? Do people lose their paychecks or do they just get it back later? Who can Trump now basically permanently cut from the feds because of the shutdown, and now we can sort of just terminate employments? What's the net effect of the shutdown? Who's to blame? And what mobility does Trump have now to reduce the size of the federal government?
So Democrats are so accustomed to winning the narrative battle and the PR battle surrounding shutdowns because the first major shutdown in the modern era happened a little more than 30 years ago, or thereabout, or almost exactly 30 years ago, after Republicans took the House in 1994 and late 95, used a shutdown to challenge Clinton, and Clinton made it, the Republicans want to cut your Social Security and Medicare and so forth. And consequently, it backfired on Republicans, and it pretty much politically has ever since. The reason why it didn't this time is it was much better handled by the Trump administration, particularly Vice President Vance, who made it all about about Democrats wanting illegals to get benefits. Now, that wasn't the Democratic narrative. The Democratic narrative was they wanted, so you could have a continuing resolution that's a clean continuing resolution. What does that mean, clean continuing resolution? It means a continuing resolution that doesn't get into anything beyond extending the current budget for another 60 to 90 days for discretionary spending. Mandatory spending still occurs. So all that still occurs. They don't shut down the Bureau of Prisons. They don't shut down the military. They don't shut down law enforcement. These things don't get shut down. What gets shut down are discretionary areas. Now, people can come in and still work, but they're not getting paid. But historically, every time it ends, they get furloughed. They can choose to work or not work, but they usually get their pay restored to them. They're usually reinstated with full pay once the continuing resolution is passed. What Democrats did is they wanted to, because they're so accustomed to winning this political battle, and because they got burned by agreeing to a continuing resolution back earlier in the year, with their base is enraged. Their base just wants war. Their base thinks the fascist, totalitarian, authoritarian Trump is coming to lock them up tomorrow. You have people in Europe saying, I can't travel to the United States. I'll get locked up and deported. I mean, just insane nonsense. But that's the level of their mindset at the moment. And that's putting massive pressure on the Democrats to come up with a pretext. And their pretext was, they just didn't get ahead of this PR-wise, was that the Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, has subsidies that President Biden put in to expand access to the Obamacare insurance policies by discounting the premiums and capping them. And those subsidies run out the end of this year. And Democrats decided they were going to make that their issue to hijack the continuing resolution to support. But Vance was very smart, realized, let's get ahead of this before they get their ACA narrative out. We're going to get out the narrative that, in fact, and this was also true, they want to continue to make sure illegals get health care and government paid, compensated for health care. And that's a big winner on the Republican and GOP side. That's why for the first time in forever, Democrats are not dominating the PR battle. To give you an idea of how long the Democrats had planned on this, they already had their little wine conference in wine country planned, so to go there for like a week or two. So that's why I put out a free pick. For those at Sports Picks already had the picks months ago, but was that there would be a shutdown, that the shutdown would last at least 10 days. Because if you understood these underlying dynamics. Now the median expectation is that it lasts at least 20 days. So that's the sort of background of what's going on. I don't think Democrats, because of their base issues, can come back and sign a clean continuing resolution at this point. They're not really in position to do that. They're going to have to keep bleeding out politically, and they don't want to interfere with their wine conference. That would be unfair and unjust. So I think that you'll see. I think this will drag on, pretty long, and GOP is winning. And the other, it's both political leverage and a potential opportunity, which is Russ Vought, OMB, Office of Management and Budget in the Trump White House, was part of Paul Dans. Paul Dans, the man challenging Senator Lindsey Graham in South Carolina. By the way, one of the last requests that Charlie Kirk ever made was please defeat Lindsey Graham. That was being circulated now. He stated at a South Carolina church gathering. But the Project 2025, they came up with an idea, and they said, next time there's a shutdown, let's use it as an opportunity to not just furlough employees, but to use what is called an RIF, a reduction in force, because we can use the absence of funding to justify this permanent reduction in force in the administrative bureaucratic state, particularly in the most problematic and politicized agencies.
So are there any agencies in which you cannot use the RIF because they're, I don't know, integral or essential services to use the COVID
if it's not discretionary, so the areas where there's no government shutdown, in other words, not mandatory spending, non-discretionary spending, this RIF will not impact that at all. It only impacts those people already being furloughed. And they're like, well, since we have this opportunity that there's no money, the money is the basis. Like, look, there's no money. Is the basis to do the RIF, the reduction in force. And if you're laid off in this process under federal law, you have to get 60 days notice. You can do 30 days notice on select circumstances that mostly won't apply here. So this is what people saw circulating on social media. They were getting confused by. So the RIF, in order for it to be effective, in order for it to be legally impactful, they presume a 60-day notice, and they think the shutdown has to happen 60 days. That's not the case. The assumption is that if there's a continuing resolution passed with it before that 60-day time period, that they'll reinstate the employees. There's no obligation for them to reinstate the employees. And those individual employees can go through the merit selection board if they think their termination has been unjustified. But as the Supreme Court has been shutting down, all efforts to take this to federal court, as one of the free picks I gave out, was that the courts ultimately, when it's finally adjudicated, will not side with the unions. Because, by the way, a union sued right away, the government union, sued, guess where? San Francisco. It's like, how does San Francisco have any bearing on this? You talk about venue shopping. The venue shopping is so abusive. If I did it, I would get sanctioned overnight and they'd be threatening my bar license. The left does it every single time and they face no adverse consequence from it. And it's a problem. And it's a problem we probably need to fix at the congressional level
No, just a quick question, Robert. So if they want to get their jobs back and after the furlough, what is required for that? Is it sort of like, is it Senate?
You have to go through the merit selection board process. So if they do the RIF and they don't, no matter how long the shutdown lasts, if they don't restore their employment, it doesn't matter whether it's 30 days, 60 days, whatever, that if they choose not to change the RIF, which they are entirely entitled to do, and this is what some people are missing, then but it does give an incentive. The longer if the shutdown were to last 60 plus days, it's a little bit cleaner and easier. But either way, they have to go through the merit selection board process. But at least during that time period, they don't have power because they've been terminated. Because all these efforts to go to lower courts and the lower courts enjoining it on these RIF policies has already been adjudicated by the Supreme Court that this is carte blanche for the executive branch to do. Their new theory is they're suing under the Administrative Procedures Act, citing the anti-deficiency statute, which the anti-deficiency statute is about not doing things you don't have money for. So it's always ridiculous to cite that statute as the predicate for this. But mostly they're saying they feel oppressed. They feel oppressed. I don't even know. There's whole organizations called like Mindful Federal Worker and these blog about how to deal with the emotional difficulty of being a federal employee with Donald Trump as president. Can you imagine? It's probably federal government money is probably going to some shrink so somebody can deal with their TDS while a federal government employee. They're saying they're so psychologically oppressed at the possibility of losing their job. Imagine government workers on the taxpayers, a certain phrase, on the taxpayers' dime, think they should have far more rights than all you ordinary people out there that have real jobs. So I think that they have a chance for this RIF to work. What it's doing is it's escalating political risk for the Democrats. That how long are they willing to let this, in the name of hijacking an agenda, in order to support their Obamacare provisions, which is publicly being perceived as helping illegals get health care. So they're already politically bleeding out on that side of the aisle. And then, of course, Trump introduced the most powerful modern political tool, the meme. He's got him dancing with the Mexican mariachi band. It's him throwing sombreros on everybody, and they're all going nuts. Vice President Vance said, "Don't worry, if you come back and open up the government, no more sombrero memes. Don't worry." So that's our compromise proposal. They're just getting crushed in the PR battle on this, and it's a great policy opportunity. And the only reason it's really understood as a great policy opportunity is thanks to Paul Dans at Project 2025. You can go Dans for the Senate, South Carolina, great candidate, someone I've known way back, someone who brought me in to the Trump election challenge in 2020, the real deal. As he said, I was MAGA before MAGA. You can go back and watch Viva's and I's interview of him from a few months back. So I think there's a better than average expected chance that the courts do not stop this, and that, in fact, the RIF at least works for the time being. And they'll have to go through all the merit selection board to try to get it reversed.
Robert,